Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here. I just finished watching Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. I'm recording this review in my car because my kids are trying to go to sleep. It's kind of late, and this is the only place I've got where I can speak loudly enough to record this video and kind of share my thoughts. If you saw my review for the first part of this, I guess, duology, I didn't like it at all. I thought it was just kind of bland and forgettable, and there wasn't really a whole lot going on there except for a lot of slow-mo, some cool visuals. So going into part two, I watched it because I like science fiction, and I wanted to see if Zack Snyder could try and salvage this thing, because I think generally he's got some talent as a director. I like 300. I liked what he did with his kind of updated version of Justice League and all of that. So I went into this, cautiously optimistic, and I gotta say, I think it's even worse than the first one. Unfortunately, if you like slow motion grain as in wheat being cut, this is the movie for you. Again, for whatever reason, Snyder just really feels like if he doubles down on the slow motion, that people are going to love that. There are some visuals here that are kind of interesting, but the thing that really stood out to me about this, especially as the plot kind of continued, is that it felt like we ended up right back where we started with the first movie in a lot of ways. But also that it really borrowed heavily from Star Wars, the original Star Wars, A New Hope, to the point of being kind of a ripoff. I'm not sure how many other people noticed that, but when you get toward the end, it becomes kind of comical, actually. So there are going to be some spoilers here, because I want to highlight what I mean when I say that. So if you have not seen it and want to see it, obviously pause the video, step away, and then come back. My spoiler alert is there, but basically this picks up where the last movie left off, but it sort of gets to this point in the film where there's a climax on board of a very powerful space weapon type of ship, and to get on board, our heroes have to disguise themselves and let the tractor beam kind of reel them in by pretending that they're having some mechanical issues, and they get on board, and once they're on board, they have to sneak around the ship, or one of them does anyway, to disable its engine and take out the super weapon. Does that sound familiar at this point at all? And then eventually we've got a showdown with basically the Rebel Moon equivalent of lightsabers and all of that. So, and even toward the end, even after that part, this Rebel fleet shows up, and they call it that, the Rebel fleet. It's just like Star Wars. And they're checking in, this is Red Leader standing by us. They don't use that term, or those terms, but it's very close to that. And so, again, to me, this felt like, okay, Snyder was thinking, what if I take, some of the, story beats of a famous film like Star Wars that obviously is beloved and works well, and sort of inject that here. So to me, this, even though, there are some promising moments in it, it just felt like a ripoff of Star Wars. Obviously heavily inspired by that, but, in this instance, so much to the point that it's plagiarism, essentially. So, yeah, I didn't really like that very much at all. And again, when it just comes down to it, story-wise, I did not care about any of these characters. I just didn't. I mean, clearly there are some moments here that are supposed to be super weighty and sad, and as a viewer, I'm supposed to be really invested in what's happening to these people, but I just didn't care. Again, it just felt like it was sort of dragged out in the way that the first movie was, and that everything was sort of monochromatic, not just visually, but just in terms of the acting and in terms of the story that we get from the characters. So, I don't know, I just found this to be, like the first movie, pretty forgettable, and I think a month or two from now, I probably won't remember a whole lot about it, or will ever care to revisit it. So, that's my really quick and dirty review of Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. If you've seen it, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you have a completely different take? Do you disagree with me? If so, obviously totally cool, but this is just my opinion. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll check back in soon.